to the next episode of Leadership Stories brought to you by Inroads Leadership Development. Our guest today is Gopal Ananthanarayanan Iyer. Gopal is a seasoned talent leader with over 17 years of experience working with large multinational organizations. Currently with EY, Gopal leads the Gig Now, a program that has a specific focus on attracting and engaging with people for gig assignments at EY. Thank you, Gopal, for accepting our invite, and it's wonderful to have you on our next episode of Leadership Stories.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine.
So to start with, let me congratulate you, Gopal, on your recent certification on becoming an organizational development coach. So that's an added accreditation to the list of activities that you have. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about what an organizational development coach does?
Sure. So I think coaching has been an integral element of everything that we do within our careers these days. And I think as I was doing the life coaching, transition coaching, as well as the executive coaching certifications, this was a natural, I would say, next step towards it. The organizations that we work for these days require a lot of change to happen. And I think pandemics like COVID is a classic example where there had to be so much of change that we needed to do pretty quickly. And I think at the end of the day, it was agility that was required for all of us to be able to adopt and adapt to the new ways of working. Now, some of these changes are not easy for any organizations to make. There has to be a change agent who kind of works through this. So organizational development coach and his job would be to facilitate the change and make it much more easier as possible. Now, I think in a normal world, I think organizational development coach's job would be to create a sense of urgency for the organization to realize that they have to go through a change, and otherwise they will probably be cannibalized or made redundant. I think COVID times are interesting ones where we didn't really have to do the creation of sense of urgency. So I think it's all about that in terms of how you are able to work with organizations. You could be an external participant who could be hired as a consultant, or you could be within your organization. I've chosen to be within the organization and play that role.
Wonderful. So in the past, I really want to understand this because I have about 25 years of leadership experience. You've been years. There was a notion that the role of a leader is to command and control people. Okay, that's how a leader was kind of thought of, and many leaders were, that time.
Yeah.
But today we hear more and more organizations investing in developing their leaders to be coaches. And how does a leader who is a coach better at creating outcomes for his or her organization than the control kind of a leader?
So I think one of the fundamental principles of coaching is not to be a problem solver. I think you got to be facilitating a conversation and getting the individual, which is the coachee in this case, to the right solution. So it's asking them the right questions that gives them the right perspective, and then probably helps them take the right decision. Now, the business landscape that we are all in today, I think, compare this with 15 years or 20 years ago, was very different than what we have today. I think we live in a VUCA world where the change is happening at a very rapid pace, and I think what the world has taught us, or humanity has taught us in the last 100 days, is the art of possible, even in times like these. And I think if you were to align both into the element of old school leadership, where it was all about control and command, I think that style of leadership probably was just going to become irrelevant or redundant in times like these. Because imagine we live in a country where we have about 130 crore people. If at any point of time our government of India at central level had decided to enforce and execute control on everything that happened, I think lockdown is probably, I would say, still thought through in a way where states were given the empowerment. And even now, states are given the empowerment to take the right call for themselves. And I think it's a classic example of leadership in current times, where it's not about telling people, dictating terms, and asking them to do what they need to do. It's more about getting them to make the decisions for themselves, give them the right set of information, ask them the right questions, and that, I think, should enable them to take the right call for themselves. And I think that's what is needed, and that's where coaching plays an important role in being able to facilitate an outcome that is not something that I'm enforcing upon you as a leader of the organization. It's more of how I'm facilitating an outcome through the conversations that I'm having with you.
Right, that's true. That's true. And to me, it has been very recent, the coaching experience. I think it
Sure.
was probably 2017 when I actually went to a coach. It was also not, of my own accord. Somebody said,
Sure.
I going to go and, meet a coach, and I did. And
Sure.
I have started practicing it. So I don't have certifications, but I've kind of, tried to practice it based on the experience that I have in all these years. And
Yeah.
it is definitely transformational. I can
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
in people who come coaching.
Yeah.
Wonderful. There was another, aspect that we were taught when we were growing up, which was called as situational leadership. So, it wasn't the control and command, but it was told to us that you need to understand, assess the situation, and probably even the people that you're working with, and then style your leadership accordingly. And so there was a style called delegating, there was a style which was called as supporting, of course there was coaching, and then there was a directing style. If you found that your team or somebody in the team was just not, kind of being a team player, then you just direct him or her and get the work done. But today we hear more about being human. We need to be more purposeful and creative and build a strong culture in the organization. So every leader is expected to have these qualities. A term which I also hear quite often is servant leadership, or servant leaders. Could you tell us why leaders today should serve others to transform their companies?
So if you see the world having transformed, again, goes back to the evolution that the corporate world in India at least has seen in the last 15-20 years. There has been a lot of emphasis on getting the work done the better way every possible time, right? Now that could be one of the elements of digitization, one of the elements of transformation due to various work that was getting done. I'll take an analogy of a test cricket versus a 2020 here, um, and putting it across from a situational leadership standpoint. What is it that the test cricket captain used to do probably at that point of time? The conditions were very different. You would have a particular strategy for a particular location that you're traveling to. If you're in a home country, you have a different particular strategy. So you would deploy the resources. So you'll use a spinner or a fast bowler according to the situation or the condition of the match. Take a T20 as an example. Take an IPL as an example. When you look at IPL as an example, there are a lot of things at stake, and I think at the end of the day, it's not about who's best, who is winning at that point of time, right? I mean, if you talk about Mumbai Indians as an example, or if you talk about Chennai Super Kings as an example, it's not because Mumbai Indians wins because it's Sachin Tendulkar who is the captain or was the captain, or Rohit Sharma now as a captain. It's or Chennai doesn't win because it's Mahendra Singh Dhoni who was the captain or who continues to be the captain. It's more about what best they do for their teams, right? And at the end of the day, they know how best that they need to work with their teams to be able to get the work done. It is if you look at a strategy to win, why is CSK today winning more? It's because you will never find Mahendra Singh Dhoni being commanding, right? I mean, job of a cricket player when he's a fielder is to field, a bowler is to bowl, but that of a captain, yet a wicket keeper, is not an easy one. He's at the end of the day doing everything at one go and also looking at the field placements in a way. What he's doing is serving the entire team at the end of the day by being where he is. Now, coming to the corporate structure, on how we have been transforming every um, every 5 years or every 3 years now. And I think this is just going to continue evolving with this pandemic just having, I mean, we are that we are going through, will continue to challenge the status quo a lot more, right? And at that point of time, being a situational leader alone will not be able to help, because that situation is going to continue to evolve. So you need to create leaders like you who could then be helping themselves and helping you in return, which is why they say you got to become servant, and you got to make sure that you're trying to make leaders like you who are as good as you, yet bring in their unique perspectives at the end of the day, and are able to have solutions when you need them the most. In that situation, if you continue to hold command, I don't think we will be able to ever adapt to the challenges that the world is going to see going forward. And I think that's what a leader's job today is. Do not continue to enforce that you are the leader and you need to get the respect for that. I think I mean, your success going forward only will be on the basis of how successful leaders you're going to make yourself. And which is why I said I think it's more about serving your people versus leading a team, which is what I think our prime minister also keeps saying, right? He's a pradhan sevak, which means he serves the country at the end of the day.
Absolutely wonderful. And I think what this also says is that you give that autonomy to every individual, and every
Correct.
individual is a leader. Doesn't matter designation or the role, but every individual is a leader of his own right or her own right, and kind of maybe by guided by the overall leadership in the organization,
Absolutely.
and reach out when need be or get
Absolutely.
pushed, but
Absolutely.
take on the leadership and deliver the results. Fantastic,
Absolutely.
fantastic. And I also want to understand a little bit about the VUCA. Okay, this term has been spoken about and heard a lot, but maybe best for you to explain and also tell us some steps that you have taken to evolve yourself as a leader for today's VUCA.
So I would say this was termed in by I think Christian Clayton, if I'm not wrong, in his book of disruptive economy, if I'm not wrong, and it talks about disruption at the end of the day, how industries get cannibalized because they did not act. And a classic example, two of them that comes to my mind is, one is Kodak, and the other is Nikon. Sorry, Nokia. I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that. And I think the perspective to that is, you see that the world is changing. You see that the world is changing around you. The customer demands and behaviors are changing around you. You have a choice to make whether you want to take the path to remain where you are and maintain the status quo, or you want to really disrupt yourself as an organization and come to do something totally different. In Nokia's case, they stuck with Symbian as the OS for a long period. When Android approached them, they said, "No, I don't think we had made heavy investments in Symbian. We wouldn't want to let go of that. So we are not very certain on Android as the OS at this point of time." And Android went to Samsung, and see where the world today is, right? And I think Android market just exploded. Um, Similarly, I think BlackBerry and iPhone could be another example that we can take. So coming back to the VUCA world, what is VUCA? VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. The world that we are today in is no different, right? The situation with COVID is volatile. Every day the cases are increasing. It's an uncertain world. We don't know when the COVID vaccine is going to come. We don't know when the lockdowns will continue to. Uh, I mean, I mean, there are talks now that the lockdown will be enforced again because of the rise in cases in certain cities. It's a complex situation. It's not an easy one. Think about the lockdown in itself, right? I mean, in a country like India where we speak so many languages, a government order that is issued has to be translated into every local language through the secretariats, and probably has to be issued at a district and a taluka level. It's not an easy world. I mean, it's an extremely complex scenario. You may want to think that, okay, in the world of WhatsApp forwards, this should happen in minutes and seconds, but probably there is still a large amount of people who are deprived of all of those benefits. So for them to be able to know whether they have been impacted by the lockdown or not, it takes time. Similarly, we are all working in global organizations. What happens in a particular country, in terms of numbers, may or may not have a direct impact on operations in another country, but it does have an impact at the end of the day because of the complexity in the way the work gets done. And it's ambiguous. We don't know where what's going to happen tomorrow. I mean, I can just keep thinking about I'll make all of this proposals, and then I may not have full clarity yet about whether this demand is going to come or not. So that's the VUCA world that we are living in. So as it's rightly and beautifully said in that entire book, it says replace V, which is volatility, with vision. Right? Have a vision for what you need to do and continue to be true to it. Replace U, which is uncertainty, with if I'm not wrong, I'll come to that. Uncertainty with something. C for complexity with confidence, and A for ambiguity with agility. Right. And as they say, when we look at how we have been working through the entire last 5-10 years of VUCA world that we are all in, I think it's even if you would have wanted to resist change, you would not have been able to, because it's like the change management, as they say, the early movers have always the advantage, and the laggards probably are always gonna find it difficult. Now, personally speaking, in my own view, I think what I've done is keep challenging myself, ask myself this question as to, okay, what am I doing? Am I on the right path? Do I need to do something differently? Continue to disrupt myself, and disrupt, when I say, it means, have I maintained enough a status quo? So there's a beautiful concept called S curve. So the way S is, I mean, you start like this in your career, you go up there and you plateau, and I think the plateau can result into you starting to drift down, and then that has happened to a lot of people, right? I mean, a lot of people start their careers, go really fast, grow up, hit plateau, and then suddenly start dropping down, and find themselves to be not in the right position to be able to even get a better opportunity for themselves, and struggle. And that's what we all know much better as mid-career crisis, which happens to everybody at some point of time. The choice is, the moment you hit the S, you have a call to make to whether you want to plateau out, you want to continue another S, create
Okay.
another S for yourself and grow up, which is what is called disrupting yourself, and find a new area to grow in your career. Now, I think that's something that I've continued to do. Upskilling has been one of the huge support in my career so far, in being able to continue to learn different things, broaden my perspective, because the world today requires you to know a lot more, and there is enough and more content that's available for you to consume and apply the knowledge that you have into the world of work that you are putting together. And I think in I would not discount the entire element of networking in this. The more you network, the more opportunities you get to display what you know, and I think at the end of the day, it just helps you continue to further disrupt yourself, because at the end of the day, you may end up talking to someone who brings in a totally different perspective, and you may want to say, oh yeah, I'd never thought about it, let me do that. And I think that's what I would say.
Wonderful. So you believe that as a leader, it is, of course, for a leader, for any individual, but especially so for leaders, it is important for them to kind of continuously evolve themselves by upskilling, reskilling, networking, looking out for opportunities, seizing every opportunity. And maybe that itself gives some drive and motivation for the rest of the team to do so.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And you see that happening across in your organization. Do you see individuals actually taking after kind of evolving themselves, continuously drawing their skirts? You see the trend changing?
So it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. I think being in the comfort zone has been one of the easiest thing for a lot of individuals to do, and there has never been a concentrated effort by a lot of organizations to be able to uh, emphasize on career for themselves, and which meant that people it's got to be a two-way affair at the end of the day. I mean, as much as the organization wants to do something for you, unless and until you don't really take benefit out of it, it doesn't work for you. I think it's evolving as we speak, and I think COVID has taught us a lot of interesting lessons out of that, on how you would want to reinvent yourself and reimagine your career in these times. Because a lot of people who did not innovate or disrupt themselves probably had a tough time maintaining themselves in a particular role within an organization. uh, I think there are still a lot more career options that we today have on account of digitization and the Internet of Things that were not available probably 10 years ago when similar downturn happened. And I think it's up to us to be able to. I mean, it's for me as an individual to be able to work through it, to find ways to better myself. And we in EY we believe something called as better me. Only if you're better yourself, you be working towards building a better working world. So I think that's what our purpose is.
And towards the end of this conversation, I'm also curious to understand this aspect. So, in an earlier episode of Leadership Stories, we had someone who spoke about an important leadership tool called as the mirror. And as
Mhm.
it says, a mirror is kind of, is showing you, who you are and what you are and how you are. So I would like to know from you, how have you practiced self-awareness, and to ensure that you do not become blind to your shortcomings? I think as we grow higher, while from whatever you've said about the kind of leader you are and the kind of leaders everyone should be, I think it shouldn't take too much for your team to come and give you feedback or you show you the mirror. But despite that, sometimes it is for us to self-reflect and kind of be aware of where we are and where we should proceed, so that we are more successful as we go higher up in the hierarchy. So we need to understand from you what you have done towards self-awareness.
Sure. I think self-awareness is also an element of what you hear from your key people in your life. A key. I mean, as I say, you're a sum of, or you're an average of five good people you live with day in day out. So it could be your parents, it could be your spouse and colleagues, your boss, and all of that. So each one has a role to play in how you are as an individual. So I would really give kudos to everybody who has a real good circle of influence, as they call it, right? Beyond that, in terms of what helps the self-awareness case, is also having good uh, friends, colleagues, and I would say also coaches or mentors. A lot of times I've found myself to be in a situation where I wanted to do something, and it's not easy to make some critical decisions, including the decisions that I've taken about moving careers into different organizations, or picking up the courses that I wanted to do, the relevance of that for in general for me, how I should probably move into a different role, and all of that. I think I've always had a blessing in a way to have a good circle of influence in my life, where I've had conversations with some of my I mean, old friends, some really uh, good people who have phenomenal knowledge in the area of work that I wanted their perspectives on, and try to ask them, okay, what do you think? Is this where it is, or I'm struggling with this? Is this something that I'm missing? I mean, is this my blind spot? I'm not sure. I think it's about vulnerability. Are you showing your vulnerability to the circle of influence or people beyond? And and at times I think I also end up doing a lot of that with my own team as well, because you need to show who you are as a person to them, for them to be able to open up to you to say, you know what, Gopal, I think you didn't do that right, because you should probably have done it this way, or we didn't really appreciate you saying that to us. At the end of the day, that didn't sound right, or um, we would have expected something else from you. It's them who give you what you need in terms of building your own self awareness. So I would say my self awareness is, of course, some of all the conversations that I have with my people, or so called circle of influence, and I have, touchwood, pretty decent circle of influence in terms of who I have been able to influence and who I have gotten influenced by. And I think I would encourage a lot of leaders to try and do that for themselves. I think mentoring and coaching is almost today in the world that we live a non-negotiable. When we say coaching, it's always we try to look at what am I going to get, but also think about what could you give, because at the end of the day, the more you give, the more you get in return.
Well, it was fantastic, in terms of listening to certain ideas and thoughts that you have. A lot of it resonated. A lot of it, kind of reinforced because I've heard from others or I've read,
Sure.
and definitely is a different world.
Sure.
One has to kind of, change from the old school of thought to the new ways of leading people, themselves, and organizations to be able to achieve the kind of outcomes that all of us wish to for personally and for the organization. So thank you, Gopal, for taking time out today for Inroads and for this episode of Leadership Stories. A key takeaway for me is to identify purpose. I think that's most
Absolutely.
important. Purpose for myself, and hence how I kind of translate that into the purpose of the organization, so that it will determine success both for me and for the organization.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Nirja. Really appreciate that.
And talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.